Hello! Welcome to Informatic Point. If you are new, like my video and subscribe channel for more information videos. Months back, President Vladimir Putin of Russia issued a stern warning concerning Israel's military activities in Gaza, raising concerns about the potential repercussions that could extend well beyond the confines of the Middle East. In a notable statement, Putin highlighted the humanitarian dimensions of the conflict, expressing dismay at what he perceived as the unjust suffering of innocent civilians in the Palestinian enclave. Putin specifically touched on the plight of women, children, and the elderly, asserting that these vulnerable demographics were bearing the brunt of the consequences for actions that were not their own. His words conveyed a global concern for the well-being of civilians caught amidst the turmoil of conflicts, emphasizing the need for a more compassionate and considerate approach in addressing geopolitical issues. The Russian leaders suggested that the Israel-Gaza conflict could potentially escalate tensions on a broader international scale, contributing to global instability. By pointing out the potential spillover effects, Putin indicated the interconnected nature of geopolitical events, where the consequences of regional conflicts might reverberate far beyond their immediate theaters of war. Furthermore, Putin's hinted at the necessity of addressing the root causes of conflicts in the Middle East. He called for a more comprehensive and equitable resolution that considers the grievances of all parties involved. The Russian president, currently at the forefront of a comprehensive military campaign in neighboring Ukraine since February of the previous year, issued a statement indicating his concern over the potential escalation of conflicts beyond the Middle East. He disclosed that during phone calls with other international leaders, he made it clear that, absent Israel ceasing its military actions in Gaza, there was a real possibility of a larger and more widespread conflict. He asserted that, as part of this strategy, these forces were deliberately manipulating the national and religious sentiments of millions of people. Expressing empathy, President Putin conveyed his condolences to the families affected by the actions of Hamas, extending his sympathies to both Israelis and citizens of other countries who lost their lives or were injured. Despite the condemnation of the violence, he reiterated Moscow's stance in favor of a two-state solution to the Palestinian-Israeli issue. According to Putin, this approach remains the only viable path toward achieving a long-term and sustainable resolution to the ongoing conflict. The friendship between Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu and Russian President Vladimir Putin has become less warm due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Even though Netanyahu used to call Putin his dear friend and visited Russia frequently, things have changed. The relationship between Russia and Israel is not as close as before, especially since Israel has been more cautious in supporting Ukraine compared to its Western friends who are more critical of Russia. The conflict in Ukraine has put Israel in a tricky spot. On one hand, Israel wants to maintain its historical ties with Russia, but on the other hand, it also wants to align with its Western allies who disapprove of Russia's actions. So, Israel is trying to balance its connections with both Russia and the Western countries. Despite the change in tone, it's important to note that Israel has not completely cut ties with Russia. Israel is navigating carefully to protect its own interests and stability in the region while dealing with the evolving situation. The friendship between Netanyahu and Putin is part of the past, and the current geopolitical circumstances are shaping how Israel responds to the conflict in Ukraine and its relationships with both Russia and the West. The recent meeting between high-ranking members of Hamas and a senior Russian official on October 26 has stirred significant consternation and surprise within Israel. The engagement with Hamas, an organization designated as a terrorist group by Israel and other countries, raised eyebrows and prompted a swift and strong response from the Israeli Foreign Ministry. Characterizing Russia's decision to host the Hamas delegation as an act in support of terrorism, Israeli officials expressed deep concern over the perceived legitimization of a group with a history of employing violent tactics, particularly against civilians. After the recent attacks by Hamas on October 7th, Russia is walking a fine line. They criticize Israel for bombing Gaza, but don't want to completely cut ties with Israel. Russia seems to want to keep channels open with both sides, possibly because of historical connections or a desire to play a role in mediating the conflict. As the Israel-Hamas conflict continues without a clear resolution, Russia might be hoping that the focus on this crisis will distract the US and its allies from paying too much attention to Russia's actions in Ukraine. It's like Russia is trying to manage its relationships carefully in the Middle East while hoping the ongoing conflict there will shift the spotlight away from its activities in Eastern Europe.